Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode of Jake Talks Star Wars, and today we're talking about another Star Wars Rebels episode. We're getting towards the end of season 1 of Rebels, and we're looking at another Star Wars Rebels episode. This episode is episode 13, Call to Action. Call to Action is a really great episode because it is going to up the stakes for the Ghost Crew significantly, right? The Ghost Crew, up until now, the biggest problem with them is that they've been a crew led by a Jedi, right? They got Jedi Knight on their crew. That's the biggest problem. That's the biggest reason the Empire is after them and wants to deal with them. This episode is going to make them a much bigger issue for for the Empire. This arc is going to make them a much bigger issue for the Empire. So I love the tone of this episode, like right from the start, right from the get. We know the stakes are higher because it opens with the Imperial March. It opens with the Imperial March and with Star Destroyers, and we know that this means business. And Tarkin shows up, Moff Tarkin shows up to deal with this personally. Now, that's another great character, right? This is another legacy character that has shown up in the series. They've done a really good job of kind of showing Vader at the first episode, but then not really using him, right? And I remember at the time they talked about why they don't use Vader as a bad guy for this season, for this series very often, because you can't, right? Your good guys can't constantly be escaping Darth Vader. Darth Vader has to be busy with other stuff that's more important than them, because that'll cheapen Vader. So they've done a really good job of showing who would be in dealing with this. And until now, the local ISB agent and the Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor, have been trying to deal with this with limited to no success. And I love how when Tarkin arrives, he immediately starts just blasting everybody, right? The governor, not the governor, the commissioner, who's like acting in the stead of the governor. She says, the general pleasantries. Oh, we're so glad to have you here. This is a great honor. And Tarkin just like he practically karate chops her. He goes, "It is not. It is not your honor. I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be happy that I'm here. I'm here because you can't do things." Right? So he's right from the start, just unhappy. And she tries to kind of defend herself. She's like, well, they got a Jedi. And he just, I wrote it down, and I hope I got it word for word. I wrote it here in my notes because they're trying to defend themselves. Oh, well, there's a Jedi at play. Things are different. It's tougher to deal with. And he just roasts them. He roasts them, and he roasts Kanan as well. He goes, "Oh yes, we must not forget the sudden appearance of a Jedi, as if leaping from the pages of ancient history." And then he looks directly at the Inquisitor and says, "A shame we don't have someone who specializes in dealing with them, or else our problem would be solved." And then he asks, like, asking the director, the civilian authority, "Have you ever met a Jedi?" And she goes, "Well, no, I've never met one." He goes, "I have, and they're dead." He's like, "I doubt this is a Jedi, and if it is a Jedi, I doubt that it's a real Jedi, a fully trained Jedi." He says, "Because I've met Jedi, and I worked with Jedi, and, remember back in his Clone Wars episodes, he was not impressed with the Jedi overall. He really was not a fan, even back then. He was, Moff Tarkin is a professional hater of Jedi. So he just really lays into these guys and lets them know that this is it, right? He's here, he's dealing with it, we're doing things his way or the highway, and he's not happy about being here. So it's so great how they introduce him, and just immediately, just with his presence, stakes are up here now. The stakes were kind of normal, now the stakes are elevated significantly. Travis, I mentioned this in my last video, Travis does come back to the Empire publicly. he really kind of throws the Rebels crew under the bus, and they start talking. They start showing their faces on the HoloNet and like how dangerous they are and how scary they are and all these sorts of things. So the Ghost crew gets the idea, like, hey, let's hack the HoloNet and let's send out a real message. Let's send out a real message of hope, just like Ezra's parents did. This is Ezra's plan. He wants to do this. And that's kind of the plan they come up with. And then we get another scene of Tarkin dealing with Imperials. And I'm going to remind you, this is nominally a children's show, right? It was shown at 9. I think it was shown at like 9 or 9:30 at night. So it was designed for older kids. It was definitely designed for older kids when it first released, but it is aimed at teens, right? Kids and teens. So this next scene, Tarkin is taking these officers to task. The two officers who we've seen all throughout episode season 1, the tall, skinny one and the kind of the short, stubby one, they were just they're caricatures of evil. I think I've described them as. I can't even remember their names. They're just caricatures of like evil bad guys. And Tarkin has taken these guys to task. Tell me about your rebels. Tell me about what you're doing. Tell me about why you're screwing this up so bad. And they're talking about, oh, they're Jedi. They're really skilled. We dealt with them yesterday, but there's no worries. There wasn't any casualties. Nobody got killed. And he says, so there's not really anything to report. And Tarkin cuts them off. And he says, no casualties means something. He says, it means your cell is more principled than other rebel cells. And what I love about this is that phrase, this cell is more principled than other rebel cells, is a shock to almost everyone in the room except Callus and the Inquisitor. They're like, what do you mean? What do you mean there's other cells? There's other rebels. This is a widespread problem. And Tarkin just kind of steamrolls over him. He's not really interested in going into why this may or may not be a widespread problem. But that's where we're at here. And he tells him, like, hey, the problem is not the Jedi. The problem is what the Jedi represents. The problem is what you allow the Jedi to represent by not catching him. And then he has the Inquisitor execute these two guys. And the way the Inquisitor does it, he's standing behind them with his double-bladed lightsaber, and he ignites his lightsaber behind them. And it happens off screen. You can only assume he ignites the lightsaber behind them and then just pushes it through the back of their necks. It sounds gruesome. Judging by the look on people's faces in the scene, it was gruesome. And this is a kids show, right? But again, now remember, stakes were here. Tarkin shows up, they're here. Now the stakes are through the roof. Tarkin is killing his own guys because he's so mad. I mean, he's pulling a Vader here. So that is the stakes now. And Tarkin says, hey, we're going to use probe droids. We're going to send probe droids all over the planet. We are going to find where these guys are. We're going to figure out what they're doing next. And then we're going to get them. Boom, boom, boom. So I love how the Ghost crew is spying on the comms building. And they see a probe. And they actually, to their credit, they get a drop on this probe before the probe finds them. So they find the space probe, the Imperial probe droid, and rather than blasting it or cutting it up with a lightsaber or something like that, which would definitely give away their position, which would definitely give away what they're doing and where they're at, Ezra uses the Force to get a Lothcat to take out the probe droid, again, in hopes that it will mask their presence. It's a really cool idea, really great idea, and again, demonstrates how far Ezra is coming in his knowledge and use of the Force. So definitely very, very interesting stuff there, which I think is just fantastic. We get the attack on the comms building. Tarkin figures out what they're doing, right? Because the probe droid does see them, right? Even though it's been damaged, it does see them fleeing the scene. They said this probe droid was near the comms building. Tarkin immediately figures out what they're trying to do, so he sets a trap for them. When they attack the comms building, when the Rebels crew attacks the comms building, the Empire really does get the drop on them. And Kanan has to stay behind. Kanan is staying on the ground level. He's sending everybody to the top of the spire to escape, to get Hera to pick them up. And he has to slow down the enemy. He has to slow down the Inquisitor. And we see Kanan and the Inquisitor fighting again. But remember how earlier in the seasons, Kanan got his butt kicked by the Inquisitor multiple times. This time he's doing much better. He's holding his own. And just, I love the continuity because the Inquisitor notices. The Inquisitor says, oh, somebody's been practicing. So the Inquisitor knows that Kanan is working at this and can tell that Kanan is working at this. And I love that little bit of continuity because it's almost as if the people who write these stories know that somebody like us would say, oh, well, Kanan lost so much earlier. How come he's winning now? Just that little line of, oh, someone's been practicing. Okay, that explains it. Now we know. But Kanan is ultimately captured, but the rest of the crew escapes. So Kanan is captured by the Inquisitor. The rest of the crew escapes, and Ezra gives his speech. Now, this last part is really important. This last part, I think, is really important for this episode. Ezra is giving his speech to the people of Lothal, and by extension, the people of the galaxy. He's talking about how he's young, but he remembers there was a better time on Lothal prior to all of this, and he's talking about how things can change again, but he's acknowledging that we're afraid. He's saying, yeah, I know it's scary. I know there's going to be sacrifice. I know it's going to be difficult. I know we're going to lose. I know we're afraid. And I wrote this down. He says, we can't back down because we are afraid. That's when we need to stand the tallest. And that is the truth, right? That is a true statement. When you're afraid, it is the most important time to stand tall. And it's not easy. I don't always do it. I know not all of us do. That is tough. Learning that and following through on that is one of the most difficult things that's out there, I think. But this message that Ezra is sending out is so important and so damaging to the Empire that Tarkin destroys the tower. Tarkin uses rockets from his little helicopter type ships. He uses rockets to destroy that tower rather than allow that message to continue to be broadcast. Put it into perspective, in the galaxy, this tower is responsible for all the communication on this planet. All the communication from outside the galaxy to Lothal and from Lothal to the rest of the galaxy goes through this tower. And Tarkin destroys it. That's how important stopping this message is to the Empire. And it reminds me of something that I've heard recently. And it something I've heard recently. If your words weren't powerful, if your speech wasn't powerful, they wouldn't try to silence you. The speech that Ezra was giving was so powerful that Tarkin was willing to destroy an entire communications for an entire planet. Right? And that's in the story. That's just a story. But think about in real life. People's speech is so powerful that what kind of things happen? I don't want to get into it, but you know. If you know, you know. So remember, just because we're scared, we can't back down. We have to stand the tallest. That's when we're scared, we have to stand the tallest. And if our speech wasn't powerful, they wouldn't try to stop us. Really important stuff, really vital stuff. And again, that's part of why we love this so much. It's part of why I love Star Wars so much, because I mentioned it in my intro video. A lot of these stories show us how we should behave. These are modern mythologies. that demonstrate to us what we should do in times like these, in times like what we're seeing in the show. So really interesting stuff. Great episode. But now we have to go into the finale. What happens to Kanan? Is Kanan going to be rescued? Is Kanan going to make it out? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Definitely check out Rebels if you haven't already. But that's it for today. Very powerful episode, very good episode, I think. And really thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, guys, if you have any questions or anything like that, let me know in the comments below here on YouTube. You can also follow me on Threads and on Instagram and let me know about your questions there. And stay tuned. I'm going to be talking about the season finale. I'm going to do another 2-part episode for the season finale for Rebel Resolve. I'm going to do that as a 2-parter in the next episode of Jake Talks Star Wars. So stay tuned for that. And that's that, guys. Thanks for coming by. If you stayed this long, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. Remember, like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Take care of each other out there. And as always, may the Force be with you. Bye-bye.